Welcome to Jackie Wall's studio and this fun and easy crochet toque tutorial. Please like and subscribe and connect with me on social media for all the latest updates. You will need yarn, the appropriate crochet hook, and a yarn needle if you have one. You will need to know how to chain and half double crochet. In this video, I will be making an adult small toque. The sizes listed here are approximate. It is always best to measure the fit as you go. The first number is the length of the chain you will need. The final size could vary according to how much your yarn will stretch. For a larger adult size, add 2 to 5 centimeters or 1 to 2 inches extra for both dimensions. This pattern will give you a wide fold for the brim. Welcome. In this video, we will be creating this beautiful bulky toque or hat or beanie, whatever you would prefer to call it. I am Canadian, so I am going to call it a toque probably most of the tutorial. The pom-pom is optional. This one I just got at a craft store, or you can find them online. And I also have this brooch here that is also optional. It's just a nice little embellishment. I call it a bling toque. And I popped the back off the brooch, but you could just pin a brooch on your toque for a different look, and then you could switch them out. So I am going to be using a roving bulky yarn. So you can use whatever yarn that you have available. Just make sure that you have the appropriate crochet hook for that yarn. And the main thing is to get the dimensions the same. So you may have more stitches than I do because I'm using a bulky yarn. And as I said, the bulky yarn will be a quicker way to create this toque. Before we start, I do want to talk about a little bit of the difference between the yarns, and then we will get going. So this is a roving wool. You could use an acrylic, or you could use a blended wool, or you could use a worsted wool. So let's talk about the difference between a roving and a worsted wool. This is roving. It is thicker, and it is a little bit more inconsistent when it comes to the yarn throughout. So sometimes it's a little more frustrating to work with. If you do get a really bulky section, you can just give it a good twist. And sometimes you can get then a little bit more consistency the more you just kind of give it a twist. That way, there, I got that bulk quite a bit out. But this kind of just is a little bit more of a traditional and old world look. The worsted wool is much more consistent, or any worsted yarn, because it has a consistent thread throughout, and then, or a smaller yarn that is twisted together to give the worsted consistency. So you can use whichever yarn you want. Just make sure that you have the appropriate size hook. So for this yarn, on my package, I'll be using this color today. It tells me that I need a 6 millimeter, so that's what I will be doing. And if you have a different kind of yarn, just take a look. This one is a 5 millimeter. So as I said, the dimensions are what's important, not the number of stitches. So I will tell you how many stitches I use for the bulky and the dimensions that I get, and you can just adjust accordingly. All right, so grab your yarn, grab your hook. If you have a yarn needle to tie in your ends, that's great. And a pair of scissors. That's all we need. This project will start as most do with crochet, and we will start with a slip knot and a foundation chain. So I am making an adult sized toque, so I will need enough chains to make about 15 inches. You can adjust the size according to the chart that was up at the beginning of the video if you would prefer to make it for a different size. So I will need about 40 chains with this number 6 bulky yarn. Oops, and I'm getting tangled already. There we go. So I'm just going to keep working this till I get about 40 chains, and it's about 15 inches in length. So go ahead and finish your base chain so that it is according to the size you're making. An adult one will need to be about 15 inches. I am now at 38 centimeters or 15 inches, and now I will move on to the next row, which is all half double crochets. The entire project is. So we need to work in the third chain from the end. We don't count this one here that our hook is in. So there's 1, 2, and here is the third. So I'm going to yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over, and go through those 3 loops that are on my hook. And if you're going to continue doing a regular half double crochet, that is exactly what you'll do. Yarn over, go into the next chain, and go through those 3 loops. All right, and yarn over again, go through, and then go through those 3 loops. So you may want to try the variation of the stitch in the toque that I showed you because it does look different than this. I'm just going to show you the difference so that you can choose. First, I'll show you a toque that was made with the regular half double crochet and then one with my stitch variation. All right, so this is a toque made with a regular half double crochet, just absolutely gorgeous. This is a blended wool. And then the one I showed you earlier is a little bit different. It's still a half double crochet. I'll just show you the variation to get this look. It just gives it a little bit more of an angled look. I'll put them side by side. So you can see here the stitches are more parallel. And then this stitch is more angled. So if you would like to learn how to do this, I'll be doing this throughout the whole video, partly because my mom, who taught me how to crochet when I was 12, wanted me to show her how to do this stitch variation. So I love it that I am able to now show my mom new things. All right, so I'm going to undo this and come back and show you how to do the stitch variation. All right, I've ripped out those stitches and now I'm going to show you how to do the stitch variation, which I will be doing throughout the video. If you are more comfortable with the half double crochet, just stick with that. All right, so this starts with a regular half double crochet in that third chain, just like before, going through those 3 loops. Now, it's the same process as a half double crochet, but we are going to first put our hook through that loop of the last stitch, then yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over again, and come through. So it'll look like there's 4 loops, which there is on your hook, but this one is that previous stitch we went through. And then you're going to pull through all 4. So same thing, here's that last loop. I'm going to go through that, yarn over, go through my chain, yarn over, come through. There's 4 on there, and go through all 4. And go again. Go through, yarn over, into the chain, yarn over, come through, and go through. And then you get a much more angled stitch right here. That's the one that we've gone through and we've just pulled it over a touch. So you'll get this effect moving forward. So pick whichever one you're more comfortable with, and let's finish this row and I'll meet you at the end. All right, let's finish up this first row of half double crochets. I have 2 stitches left to do, so I'm going to complete those and then we're going to move on to the next row. All right, so now to move on to the next row, we need to chain 2 so that we have some height for our stitches and then turn our work. Now we won't do anything with these 2 chains. They are in order to give us the height for our stitch, and then we're going to do a half double crochet into the back loop only. Okay, so if I was going into both loops, I would go into this hole right here, but I want just the back loop only for this project so that I get this ribbing that you see. We see this line right here? That is because I've worked in the back loop only. So let's go ahead and work in that back loop only. I have to start out with a regular half double crochet and then I'm doing that variation. So I'll go through that stitch and then complete my half double crochet. All right, so continue with whichever stitch that you have been using, and I'll meet you at the end to go to the next row. I'm nearly at the end of my second half double crochet row. I just wanted to show you this at the end. So when I look at it right here, it really looks like I only have 2 stitches left to do, but please double check that because this is where it's easy to drop a stitch. If I look here, Okay, this is where my stitch went into, and then there are 2 chains there. So I don't want to crochet into those chains, but there is a stitch here that is difficult to see. So please double check at the end of your row. If you want, you could put a stitch marker into that chain so that you know that you still have that stitch there, or go back and count all of your stitches to make sure they're the same on every row. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this row, and the next row is exactly the same as we just did. And then we'll talk about how to complete all of your rows. So to complete all of your rows, just do it like we did the last time, and start with your 2 chains and turn your work. Depending on the size that you are doing, you would have to check on how many rows you're going to have to do. So I am doing a hat for an adult, so 51 centimeters I have to have going across, or 20 inches. So I will have to complete that number of rows to get a rectangle that I am going to have is about 14.5 inches in height, because we had those 2 chains that we didn't use. So this is just under 15 inches or 38 centimeters. And now I'm going to work until I have about 20 inches going across, or 51 centimeters. So continue with your rows, enjoy, and we will come back to fasten off and finish the hat. I only have a couple stitches left to go to get my 20-inch or 51 centimeter rectangle. It did take me 34 rows. So I am just going to finish these last couple stitches, and then we are going to tie this off, and we are going to connect it together. There's lots of different ways to connect your toque together, but I am going to show you the one that I like to do. There we go. I have completed my last one. I'm just going to snip off that end. I'm going to leave quite a bit, and I'm just going to pull that through. Whoops, to tie it off. Okay, so that's a good example. So while I was using the roving wool, and when you pull it really hard, sometimes it will tear apart. So when I am doing some of the next steps, I'll be using a different yarn, just because it'll be a little less frustrating. All right, I am now going to stitch this together. So I have my 2 ends pulled together, and I have my yarning needle, and I am just going to go to the very, very end of my one side and the very end of my other side, and I am going to simply tie this together. Now I'm going to be careful not to pull too tight. The stitches will take care of that. All right, now that I have that tied together, I am going to show you how to stitch this together. Now that my 2 short sides of my toque are tied together, I'm going to take my hook and put it in the loop where I tied that yarn in the right-hand side, and then I'm going to go over top of that yarn that I tied them together with, and I'm going to go into the loop on the left-hand side, and I'm going to yarn over, and I am going to come through until I have a loop on my hook. Then I'm going to go to the next back loop only of the right-hand side, back loop only on the left-hand side, yarn over, and go through both of those sides and the loop that was on my hook. Back loop only, right-hand side, back loop only, left-hand side, yarn over, through the left, through the right, and through the loop on my hook. Let's do a few more. Right-hand side, back loop only, left-hand side, back loop only, yarn over, through both sides, through the loop on the hook. And again. As you can see, this is quite a quick way to put your 2 ends together. Now you could slip stitch them together as well. I just really like the look of this. It adds a little more detail to the toque, and it really takes no time at all to stitch up your 2 sides. And there's the final look that you get. I have completed stitching my two sides together, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my toque inside out. And I am going to take my yarning needle and I am just going to work those ends through on the inside of my toque. So that is what I am going to do, and then we will come back and we will do the finishing off on the top of the toque. Here is the inside of my toque. Here is the seam that I just finished from the inside, and now I just have to choose an end that I'm going to tie together. I kind of like the way this end looks better, but it's not much different. As you saw earlier, the roving yarn does sometimes pull apart when you're putting a lot of pressure on it. So I have this little bit of scrap in my drawer, and I have put it on my yarn hook and or my yarn needle, sorry. And I am just going to find some holes in the top of my toque. They don't have to be very close together. And I am just going to go around and weave in and out with some yarn. And I'm going to do that all the way around. I have completed weaving around the top of my toque, and now I am just going to pull these two ends tight. Make sure I don't have a gap there, and I am just going to cut that off and just tie a couple of knots once I feel like it's nice and tight. There we go. There, that's where my roving yarn would have probably snapped. I have used it before, but you just have to be very, very careful and patient. And then I'm going to take my yarn needle again, weave in these two ends, and then I am going to sew a button right here on the inside so that I can pull my pom-pom through. And the nice thing is that then I can always detach my pom-pom if I want to have a different look for this toque. All right, there is my button. Now I am going to take my crochet hook and stick it in the middle and grab my pom-pom and hook the loop on my pom-pom onto my crochet hook and bring that through, and then just slip that over top of the button. So now this toque can go with the pom-pom, or you can just simply take it off for an entirely different look. And here it is, our finished toque. I am going to flip over that edge, and I have these brooches. I got quite a few here. I do snap the back off of them and file off the rough edges, and then I do sew them on. You wouldn't have to, you could just pin it on. But there is the final toque. I hope that you enjoy wearing it or giving it to someone you love. Thank you for watching, and remember, just keep creating.